There's a lot of talk about security these days. We'd all like to find some peace and safety. Try the Tijuana Slough National Wildlife Refuge and its associated park system. The southwesternmost corner of the United States is one of the most peaceful and unique places in our country. In this fertile zone between land and sea, hundreds of species find security, including humans. Salt marsh plants purify the water. Songbirds fill the air. Tidal fish nurseries replenish the sea. Of total renewable ecosystem resources on our planet, fully 42% issue from wetlands like the Tijuana estuary. This vast expanse of grasses and shrubs is one of the largest wetland ecosystems left on the Southern California coast, a veritable life support system. You, American taxpayers, paid for this life support security. Over the last 25 years, you've paid $500 million to manage and protect these 4,500 conservation acres. In exchange, you've received clean air, clean water, biodiversity, energy conservation, and marine resources at California's southwest border. These are your security. You paid for them. Today, the federal government has a different sort of security in mind. At the behest of the Department of Homeland Security, earth movers are flattening the land between the U.S. and Mexico, scraping a 150-foot wide swath flanked by 15-foot high, pole-mounted fencing of expandable metal mesh. They'd have you believe that this, the triple border fence, will stop this from happening. But how? People can still cross our borders. They can go over the fence, under the fence, around the fence. If people want to get into the United States badly enough, they will get in. Look at the immigration figures. People who want to get into America still find a way. Without being effective, the triple border fence has cost you, American taxpayers, roughly $60 million thus far. But walling off our Southern California border exacts additional costs that are much bigger than any dollar amount. It is forcing us to sacrifice our quality of environmental protection, our quality of air and water, our quality of international relations. Chink by chink, the fence is breaking down our quality of life. The Department of Homeland Security intends to extend this fence, which isn't working, right through the conservation lands to the ocean. How much will it cost to get more non-security? At least $57 million. But that's not all. Those are just the upfront costs. The construction of the triple border fence has already created environmental disaster. What will be the consequences of the plan to fill these coastal canyons? Where will the water go? Will people not drown if the federal government dams these canyons? For construction, the agency plans to use sandy soil, which local authorities ban for use in development. What will contain the sandy soil?
And all that dirt will come out and fill in, the riparian part of the valley where all the willows and the least bills vireo live, and then it'll very quickly find its way down into the salt marsh where the clapper rails live, and then finally into the tidal channels where all these shorebirds that we see forage and the least terns forage. So it'll have huge effects on every element of the river system, the river valley and the estuary and eventually the tidal channels. So it's just a really foolish idea. It has dreadful impacts and totally avoidable impacts.
What will be the cost of destroying the last remaining undeveloped coastal mesas in Southern California? 10,000-year-old archaeological sites will disappear. Sensitive plant and animal species will be profoundly impacted. Many of California's legislative leaders are outraged by the plan to extend the triple border fence through this sensitive habitat to the sea.
Since the mid-90s when the proposal for a triple fence was first made, and particularly when we reached the stage where the only portion left was the last 3 or 4 miles going toward the ocean, that would have to go through the Tijuana estuary, the Tijuana River Valley, all of that very sensitive habitat land. Those of us, local elected officials, have all been unanimously opposed to the construction of this additional barrier for a whole wide variety of reasons. And they have yet to come forward with anything that looks like a practical plan for how to do it in a way that acknowledges the environment that they're trying to go through. And it was in the late 90s when they first proposed doing this that we asked for environmental investigations and reports. We pushed the federal government to do those when they tried not to do them, hoping that they would see, if you had in writing before you the kind of impacts that we know you would have to find if you did the scientific analysis, that they would say, well, maybe that's not such a good idea.
The California Coastal Commission is alarmed. They denied the Border Patrol permits. Mexico's President Fox and Tijuana leaders vehemently opposed the triple border fence. 6 environmental groups have filed a lawsuit.
We'll be suing to challenge the proposal to build the final 3.5 miles of the fence along the U.S.-Mexico border here in San Diego, between San Diego and Tijuana. The purpose of the lawsuit is to have the statute, the underlying statute, invalidated. That statute allows the Secretary of Homeland Security to waive any laws that he determines to be an impediment to building the fence. We think that that statute gives the Secretary too much authority without any oversight from Congress, and on that basis it's unconstitutional. If only it would cost $60 million, but the federal government knows that it's more likely to cost about $250 million. The government has been presented with a number of alternative designs and a number of alternative cost estimates. The government doesn't want to hear any of that, and every time those points are raised, the government simply closes its ears and says, no, we're not going to hear it, we're going to build this particular fence. It's an enormous waste of money. The government, we don't even begin to know how expensive this is really going to be.
So add to that $57 million, a very expensive, ever-increasing tab for unanticipated flood events caused after fence construction, health services when dust replaces the clean air, when standing water and floods breed disease, diminished food supplies as marine resources dwindle, poor relations with Mexico.